All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is your host, Tommy Tahoe. My real name's Tom Alamo, but they call me Tommy Tahoe around these parts. Welcome to the show, or welcome back to the show, where I help to break down how to build a successful sales career, not necessarily from what I'm doing, but talking to some of the brightest minds in the sales industry to learn the tips, the tactics, the stories, the ideas, the questions that will help you make you a better seller, help you make more money, help you be more fulfilled, etc. So thanks for joining this episode. I put out a post on Friday that, it was my first week in my new role over at Gong. I could not be more excited to be there. And it really feels like, a dream job and one that I'm just so excited to sink my teeth into. So thanks first and foremost, everyone that's shot me a DM on LinkedIn, that's commented on the posts, texted me, called me, emailed me, etc. The love is very much appreciated. And I'm hoping that all the industry insights and the knowledge that I gained from this job can also maybe make this show even better and make me better as an interviewer and help to get better conversations for you folks as well. So I'm just so passionate about the sales landscape, sales technology, being a sales professional, growth mindset. It just made so much sense, and I'm loving it. So thank you for that. I want to tell you a little bit about today's guest. The Millennial Spotlight is on my guy, my friend Brian Marzo. If you don't know Brian, he is the director of sales over at the RTM Business Group out in New York. And this is what we talked about. Being a first-time sales leader, being a leader in general, let's broaden it out, is really hard. I remember I got a role about 2 years ago where I was a player coach. I was still selling, but I was also managing a team of 4 reps, and it was so much harder than I thought. I thought it was going to be you just go out and you're training people to sell, and you're in these deals and you're closing deals and all that. And it's so much more. There's so much interpersonal communication. There's so much emotional intelligence that you have to have. It was by far the hardest thing that I'd ever had to do, and I wasn't particularly great at it. And I hope someday in the future I can get better. But Brian breaks down, what his experience has been like for the last several years as a sales manager for the first time, how he helps to open up his team and have real authentic conversations. He's a big fan of the book Radical Candor, and having those both with the people on his team, with clients, with prospects, just in general. We talk books for a little while. He's a big Matthew McConaughey Green Lights fan, which I got to tell you that I thought the book would be pretty good. It was outstanding, so I couldn't recommend it highly enough. And Brian's just got a great demeanor about him. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing his tales from the field, getting a vibe for him. Super humble. He's got great energy. If you do enjoy the conversation, I'd love if you added Brian on LinkedIn, give him a shout out, tell me you listened to the episode and that you liked it. Also, as a real quick note, as a shameless plug, there's no ads on this podcast. So if you could take 60 seconds at some point, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for this show. Subscribe and leave a 5-star review. That's the number one thing. That's what helps this show to grow. That helps me get better guests. That helps the listenership go up, all that good stuff. So I would really appreciate it. It means so much if you did that. Otherwise, enjoy listening to this. I'm on Apple. I'm on Spotify. We're on YouTube if you want to watch. I'm on Twitter at Tommy Tahoe, Instagram at Tommy Tahoe. Hit me on LinkedIn. I love talking to people. I love meeting listeners and like-minded people. So hit me up and I'm happy to chat. Otherwise, let's get straight into the conversation with my guy, Brian Marzo. Let's go. Brian Marzo, happy holidays. What's up, brother?
Not too much, man. It's good to reconnect, and I'm looking at a brand new man, newly engaged. So good on you, man. Looking good.
You're next, right?
Oh God. All right. We'll let that conversation be for 2021, I guess.
We'll cut that out. I'm excited to have you on. We're in the last few selling days of the year. People getting geared up for 2021. So I'd love to hear What's the team doing? How we feeling the last few days into the selling year of 2020?
Yeah, we are officially at that stage. We 3 more selling days here within RTM Business Group to make all of our wildest dreams from January 1st, 2020 come true. And things are going really well, man. For our team, we work within the education space, right? Like we work within K through 12, higher ed, and all of those industries for the most part shut down come right before the holiday break. So we have very real, very genuine, very transparent conversations with all of our partners and people looking to work with us. And I think just year after year, this is always one of our better months. And even in a pandemic, this December is showing to be probably one of our best months here as well. So things are going well for us.
I love it. I love it. So tell me more about the transparent conversations. I think that's something that, as a young seller, that was one of the things I was worst at. I was always, kind of like flirting around the things that, our product couldn't do, not asking questions about the timeline, not trying to get, an idea of who the decision maker is, and just kind of flirting around some of those tough questions. So how do you do that, or how do you coach your team to be more direct?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone kind of like struggles in that spot, but like that's what we get paid to do, right? Like that's
Mm,
literally exactly what it is that we are doing as salespeople. And I just genuinely want every single person to come out of a conversation with a prospect, current customer, feeling like they actually know what could be coming from that opportunity. Not the like, oh, the hopeful, this might happen, this type of scenario. It's like, no, they are not in a position to look at whether or not they can work with us in the next 2 weeks for XYZ purposes. We obviously spend a lot of time on, discovery and talking about like our events. But I
hmm
literally tell my team to try and budget like their time, right? If you're looking at a 30-minute set call, I think you need to have at least 40% of that talking about those next steps, talking about the decision makers, talking about the budget and things like that, and just being very straightforward. Like if that's too tight timelines for them right now, if we're not a good fit, if like they're worried about the industry because of what's going on obviously in the world, like cool, we can circle back to potentially being, that partner for you. But I think every single person feels better hearing no, or at least on my team, I think that's the case, hearing no, than looking in their pipeline being like, that might close in the next couple weeks. Like we're trying
Yeah.
not to have those types of conversations just because um, it's not transparent to themselves. So we try and create that dynamic transparency with how we view our own things and obviously with our managers.
Well, there's nothing worse than getting on a 30-minute call and things are vibing, you're killing it, and you look, it's 27 minutes
Yeah.
in, and then you try to pivot to the next steps,
Yeah.
and you ask one question, and then time's up, and they have to hard stop, and you don't land the next step, or you don't ask the question that you needed to, or you get pushed off, and then someone ghosts you on the back end of that because they have a million other things that they're doing. So I feel like coaching that 40%, which maybe even is too much time, or like it's a big chunk of time, but coaching to that extreme versus letting those calls slip is super important.
And it's not that way for every single person, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not it. But what you described is the exact scenario which we are trying to avoid because also like think about yourself. Like if you have a hard stop, you don't want to just get off at that time. You want to get off 2 minutes before, most likely,
hmm
because you're going to want to get coffee, go to the bathroom, look at what the next meeting is, feel good. Like, and obviously you don't want to run late to that next meeting. So I think of 30-minute calls as obviously there's windows to that. And so that's the main reason why we try and get people just to focus in on being efficient super early in the beginning, create that relationship. And then obviously like my way of I explain this to people on my team, we're not trying to sell. We're trying to have
Mm.
business conversations, and business conversations get to the point pretty early on. And if there's a fit, perfect. And if not, maybe you do need to set up another call, and that's going to be longer than that particular time frame. But um, right now I think a lot of people are trying to chase certain numbers. And so we're going about things a little bit differently, but
And didn't I think you mentioned this on one of our last conversations, but you're a fan of the book Radical Candor, right?
love it. Yep.
See, I still haven't read it. It's on my list. Maybe I'll get to it over the holidays. But does that play into this a little bit? Just being super candid about what the expectations are, the questions you need to ask, etc.
Yeah,
Or is that
absolutely. I mean,
different?
like, because here's the thing too. Like, I know how I like to have conversations with my bosses. I know how
hmm
I like to have conversations with people that I do business with. And like I don't like when people just kind of sugarcoat types of things. Maybe it's like the New Yorker component. Maybe there's just like different types of like personalities and like, but you gotta just be, very candid with who it is that you're speaking with in every scenario. And the top performing reps, and I imagine that any of the actual like platforms can show it as well, like all the cool sales tech that I don't use, but I wish I could. The less you speak and the more you can get your prospect to speak, like that's where higher percentage of deals are being closed. And those are the conversations that are just more candid, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some
Could read it,
data
man.
that
I'll send you my copy. She's great too. She responds on LinkedIn, so she's awesome. I think Kim Scott,
yeah.
the
Oh,
author.
really? Might
Yep.
have to get her on the pod. I've seen some data recently that's come out from some sort of sales study. I forget where exactly, but that when people talk about, the weather or whatever, like that's not building rapport. Like I imagine that you're cutting all of that, those 6-7 minutes where it's like, oh, what's it like in St. Louis? I've never been there. It looks like it's windy there this time of year. It's like that's not getting you closer. That's not building a relationship. That doesn't build trust with people. It is getting to the point. And if someone were selling me, I would 10 times more likely, have them get me out of the meeting 3 minutes early than talk to me about the weather for those 3 extra minutes, right? It's like being respectful of my time.
Well, like that's the other thing too, especially when people are early on in their career, they like try and go to like safe rapport stories,
Yeah.
weather, commute. I don't know what it might be like. There's no commute or weather right now because we're all in our houses or whatnot, outside in days.
The vaccine.
Yeah, like those types of things. Like that's not groundbreaking. And like
Yeah.
if you get on a call like that, you're like, well, this is gonna be like every other conversation. Like if you're gonna do that kind of like open up introductions, like make it like shatter the glass a little bit, zig when others zag, like those types of things. And that's just got to be authentic. Like that's your personality. And if you don't have that type of personality, that's fine. Just don't do it, in my opinion, for the most part. Like, don't even bother to be like, wow, like we got 12 inches of snow. Great. I'm familiar with snow. What can we do? Like those
Do you have
types.
an example of that you use or someone else in the team uses that like is just way out there?
I mean, like, I could just think back. There's a lot of different examples. Like in COVID, there's harder ones because there's less scenarios. Like what I always found is that people relate to things that are going negative in their life more than like things that are going positive, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
But when you're like obviously talking about just the fact that you were up late last night because your neighbors in your tiny like apartment in New York City were up till 3 a.m. playing music, and like all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is gonna make my 8 a.m. meeting really difficult because I'm up at this time. Like people are like, wow, that's really unfortunate to hear. Like that's the tricky part of living in New York City, or like those types
Yeah.
of things. So I don't know, like it's all about creativity. I think there is a little bit of kind of like learning your own specific ones. If you get a dog, you get a pet, mention that on your story. Like that's
Oh
something
yeah.
immediately I can relate to having a dog. I can relate to having a pet. Like those types of things is better than the weather any given day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now how about, you're what, 26, 27?
Yep. 26.
So talk to me about that, like leading a team at such a young age. I had my first leadership gig was at about the same age. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you, I sucked especially at the beginning. It was so hard. It was so much harder than I thought it was going to be to, not just like win deals and not just hit
Right.
quota. We did pretty well with the numbers, but like to deal with the individual people and try to get them to get to their goals and, treat people differently and try to, lead them, right, and inspire them and help them get better and enjoy their job and all that stuff. So, what's the experience been like? Do you have any tips for people that might be thrust into the leadership
Right.
saddle at a young age?
Well, I think if you're gonna be thrown into it, know you're gonna suck probably in the beginning. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like I think always the mindset that I had, especially even when I like, assumed this position, I knew I was gonna fail a lot. I fail very often, and it's cliche. You gotta fail in the beginning, those types of things.
Yeah.
But, like admit it. You know what I mean? Like give me the at bat, give me the shot, like whatever it is that can't be done, I'll do it. And that's the type of stuff too. When you come in with that type of mentality, where like you also are like, I don't have all the answers. And you speak that type of way to your team. I don't have all the answers, but I do have good understandings of what we can do to make you better, the team better, get you to where you want in your career, both from a role, responsibility, financial, like laying all those things out there is just super, super important from the leadership component. And I think genuinely, like from my own point of view, a lot of the people that I work with are relatively close in same age, few higher, few younger for me for the most part. But like genuinely caring for the person makes the difference.
Mm,
I've been fortunate enough to not um, have many experiences where I don't think my boss or anyone that I work with didn't care about me. They just cared about the number. And I think that's what I've been able to implement within my team. I've heard plenty of horror stories, and hopefully you haven't, where it's just like the person that you worked for really didn't care about Tom.
yep.
And so you just felt like you were doing certain things for them because it's going to make them look better for their execs. But like, if you can understand who the person is, what's better for them, what's better for their role, it selfishly also does have impact on your own success and your own career. Because if that person that you can help succeed can grow, we can continue to scale, hire new people, they become managers. That's what's really important. It's about long-term sight of like, where do I want this thing to go? But then just caring about the person in a lot of different ways, I think.
Totally. I've stayed at jobs longer because I knew that the person that I was rolling up to cared about me,
Yeah.
right? And wanted me to succeed and wanted me to do well and was trying to help me get there. So if other things weren't perfect, other things weren't working, you know, there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to leave a company. But if you know that that your manager, or your leader cares about you and it has your best interest in mind, you're in a good spot. And I'll tell you, just from my experience and from talking to salespeople all the time, that's not necessarily the common case. You know, it's probably the minority of leaders that are actively showing the people on their team that they do care and that the team actually feels that. So if you do feel that, consider yourself lucky and really try to lean into that with your boss.
I mean, I think, and this isn't to be like, pat myself, humble brag type of deal. And it might, but like, I've been at the same company since I graduated college for the most part. There was obviously, I
Yeah.
had a job beforehand for a few months in a different line of work, but this has really been my main job. Have there been other opportunities? Sure. But like, I genuinely enjoy working for certain people. And the people that are still working with me today, I hope that they feel the same way for that reason. And
Yeah.
like, if you double down on getting someone that PD, getting them to where they want to be financially, like it plays pretty good dividends. You can't do it for everyone. I think that's another part of leadership, which is really tricky. Like, you got to try and help as many people as possible, but you can't save everyone. And you learn that really early on. And like you probably saw in your role, it's stressful. You care about every single person. And you'll make sure that you can do as best as you can with every single one, but just not everything goes perfect. And so unfortunately, you have to have those types of conversations, which is also leadership. So
Totally. So, with being mindful of the clock and trying to, keep you on schedule, tell me what's on the bookshelf coming out of Christmas break. Everyone's got usually a shutdown for a week or two or a couple days at least. I know that you've been high on the Matthew McConaughey Green Lights book. I won't even, give my impression of McConaughey here, but what else do we got?
you're saying it. I like it, man. I enjoy it. Yeah, let's see if that can get a sponsorship from McConaughey in the next one.
Yeah.
What book? So I'm reading The Four Agreements. That's the book that you recommended.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of that. Like my thought process, I used to be, and especially early on in COVID, like if I'm not reading a book a week, I'm a failure. So
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, I'm going through a lot of books, but I'm not retaining anything.
Yeah.
And it was also like, I personally think it was vanity related. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, look at this. And like, there's people who are smart and that can retain those kind of things. I'm not personally that kind of learner.
Yeah.
What I'm doubling down on, it's just the books that I see the most value from and going back to them pretty occasionally. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And there being one. I will 100% be going back to the Four Agreements probably in another 3 months when I look at my life and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Here's a
Yeah.
way to kind of get refocused on exactly what's important. But other than that, I got 15 rules of conscious leadership is on the docket for this break as well. It's like a 200-page book. And then that I think is kind of like where I'm trying to focus in on, not trying to overwhelm myself. Like this break, this is also like, let's kind of take away a little bit, chill out. Yeah. Like this is a hard year. This is a hard year for a lot of people in sales where some people are not making nearly as much money. There were challenges all here throughout there. So like, what can you do also during this break to like de-stress? And for me, I read a lot of books and maybe you're the same way. And I bet a lot of the people who listen to this are, we don't read like stories. We always read like nonfiction PD books to always try and get a little bit better, which is good. You should do that. But like, I'll be honest, man, like I'm probably gonna like lean into like some shows and some stuff that I haven't done over the past couple of
Yeah.
months. I've been so just focused in on the work. And in the meantime, maybe, reading something and trying to chase more green lights.
Yeah. You had to throw it in. That's healthy though. I think it's healthy to want to get better and grow, but also have that time where, all right, let's take our foot off the gas here a little bit. Let's maybe put on some Queen's Gambit or whatever the hot Netflix show is and lean into that for, a week and chill out and have a beer and call it a week. So I think there's a piece to that too that's super wise. And also rereading books. 2019 was the first time I really did that. And I reread a couple of my favorites. And when you're especially when you see the world differently, 3 5 years ago or that now than you did 3 or 5 years ago, the books kind of take on a different meaning. Sometimes you can kind of pick up on different things, or some things aren't as important that you read, and certain things like that. So I would definitely recommend people, if you're one of those people that's a one book a week type of person like I have been, also pump the brakes a little bit, maybe reread something, take your time, take some notes, reflect on it, all that.
And get something from it, right? Like
Yeah.
that was always the thing
Yeah.
too. I was reading all these different financial books on ways to maximize my, income, wealth, retire by 50. And like I'm coming out and I'm like, so I just don't buy coffee. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that was the one thing I would always be saying. Like, I'm like, well, okay, fine. Like I'll switch to tea. That's less, I guess. But like find specific things from fewer things. Like that's it. Like quality, quantity, every day. Chase quality.
I love it. I love it. Brian Marzo, where can the people connect with you?
You can connect with me hopefully in 2021 in person in some capacity, but we all want that. LinkedIn, just like there. I'm not doing anything else on like other platforms. I mean, LinkedIn's going to be the best spot. So
Hit him up. Brian, I think we got a big year of green lights ahead in 2021.
I love it. Let's chase them.
Thank you so much for checking out that podcast. I hope you saw value, whether you're working out right now or doing the dishes or laying around the couch, whatever you're doing right now while you're listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value. If you did, the only thing that you can do to really help me out is to share this podcast with a friend, share it on social media, and please subscribe wherever you're listening: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is, and leave a review on Apple if that's where you're listening. That's what helps us to spread reach, helps us to get better guests like the one that you heard just now, and to give you as much value as possible. So connect with me, LinkedIn, Tom Alemo, Instagram, Twitter, Tommy Tahoe, and subscribe, leave a review, and make it a great day. Peace. Thank you so much.